Francis Gerard, does the appointment of Ka Khan really exist in Scientology? And if so, does John Travolta have the right to kill people? All right. This I have seen answered in other places. I don't know that I've ever taken it up. I might have mentioned it once or twice in the past, but I thought I would actually print out the actual issues from Hubbard on what Ka Khan is and what it means. And I'm going to talk about Scientology ethics and justice here, okay? This is only a couple pages. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to show you that these is the only places that I could find where Hubbard specifically mentions Ka Khan as an award or an ethical standard to achieve. It's not all over the place in Scientology. Out of the thousands of pages of materials, these are the only places where it's mentioned at all. The entire time that I was in the Sea Org, the entire time that I was in Scientology, I heard Ka Khan, again as a status for ethics, brought up once. You know, this is not a common thing in Scientology. This is Scientology minutia. That all being said, let me tell you what Hubbard talks about. There's a policy letter that he wrote in 1965 called Ethics Protection, and this is where this Ka Khan thing was instituted. He talks here, the concept or the philosophy of ethics in Scientology is that ethics exists on an individual level. The individual is the one who's making ethical or unethical decisions for himself. And the point or purpose of ethics is survival to the longest, farthest, largest degree possible. And the most ethical concept or idea would be the one that encompassed the most number of people or entities or living things and benefited the most of them out of all of the things that it happened to touch or affect or have a consequence on. So ethics is supposed to be leading into ideal or good behavior. And Hubbard doesn't really get into the whole concept of good from my point of view, evil from your point of view. He doesn't get into the relativeness of viewpoints when it comes to ethics or how these are really just mental constructs we invent. There's no arbitrary absolute ethics any more than there's, some absolute idea of objective truth out there, that we can perceive. It's impossible for us to do so. So Hubbard doesn't get into any of those sticky entanglements with his ethics system. He tries to keep it fairly simple. And he says a couple things. I'm just going to read a few things to give it to you in Hubbard's own words, and then we'll get specifically to the Ka Khan thing. Hubbard says ethics actions must parallel the purposes of Scientology and its organizations. Ethics exists primarily to get technology in. And what Hubbard means by that is that auditing and training in Scientology are technical procedures. There's methods, there's very specific rote procedures you do when you're auditing somebody, and even when you're training somebody. I've talked about these, right, if you listen to those podcasts on this stuff. So they're considered technology. That's how they're talked about in Scientology. I think most of you guys know this, but for the newcomers or people who've not seen this before, that's why he talks about ethics existing only to get the tech used or done. And the tech is the thing that's actually supposed to handle the person or deal with them and their aberrations and nonsense. Hubbard says tech can't work unless ethics is already in. When tech goes out, ethics can and is expected to get it in. So if you have an auditor, let's say, and he's flubbing, he's messing up pre-clear after pre-clear, is getting bad results, not happy with their sessions, ethics might look at that and go, okay, this guy's not getting tech in. He's not applying the Scientology technology properly, in other words, and it's not working. So he must have something going on. There must be some ethics situation there because we've tried to correct him. We've talked to him. He's not changing. He keeps screwing up. So something must be up ethics-wise. That's the assumption that's made in Scientology. For the purpose of Scientology, amongst others, is to apply Scientology. Therefore, when tech is in, ethics actions tend to be dropped. Okay, so if an auditor is producing tons of hours every week, or a course room supervisor is producing tons of completions every week, ethics tends to leave them alone. If the statistics are going up, the guy is doing the job he's there to do, and ethics kind of goes, okay, we can leave him alone. Well, he might have a report or two about being snippy or snipey, or maybe he did something he wasn't supposed to do, and ethics sees that, a report, and they go, well, this is off the rails. But then they look at his statistics, theoretically, okay, everything I'm telling you right now is theoretically. This is how it's supposed to happen. This is not how it really happens, but it's how it's supposed to happen. So theoretically, ethics would get this report, see that he did something off the rails, but if his statistics are going up, ethics goes, he's got ethics protection. And that's laid out in this issue, right? Ethics actions are often used to handle down individual statistics. A person who is not doing his job becomes an ethics target, okay? And it's assumed if your statistics are going down that you're not doing your job. Now here's where we get to the ka-kan part. And I'm just going to read it to you verbatim so you get exactly what Hubbard said. In an ancient army, a particularly brave deed was recognized by an award of the title of ka-kan. It was not a rank. The person remained what he was, but he was entitled to be forgiven the death penalty 10 times in case in the future he did anything wrong. That was a ka-kan. That's what producing high statistics staff members are. Ka-kans. They can get away with murder without a blink from ethics. Okay? That's what we're talking about there. And then there's piece of paper number 3 here was an addendum Hubbard wrote called ka-kan, and this was put out in May of 1982, and it says, the title of ka-kan signifies a person who is a consistently producing high statistics staff or crew member or executive. Such people are valuable. A ka-kan title is likewise valuable and should not be taken lightly, nor should it be awarded lightly. Now, I want you to also note here that he specifically said that it refers to a high statistics staff member or crew member or executive. So John Travolta as a celebrity is none of those things and should not be awarded ka-kan as such. You see, it violates what Hubbard said. But that's just one tiny little example of where I mentioned earlier, in theory, this is how it works, but in practice, maybe not so much. Hubbard goes on to say here that it is the Executive Director International and another high post title, the Commanding Officer of CMO Int, for those of you who are curious, if any of you know what that means, are the authorities empowered to make such an award. So it's very, very high level person that is awarding this ka-kan award. And it says, should it occur that an executive or an ethics officer deem it warranted to cancel ka-kan status or take away one or more ka-kan lives, that person or body must actually write to the authority mentioned above who awarded the title. So it can't be that a lower level person takes one of those lives or gets the person in trouble without sending it up the chain of command first. Award the title when it is deserved. When awarded, accept the title with the pride of ownership it deserves. When accepted, continue to assume your responsibilities in the manner befitting the honor of the title, for a ka-kan is a leader among leaders. Okay? So that is the sum total of what L. Ron Hubbard wrote about ka-kan. And I think that should answer the question and any other questions you might have about that, because that's all he said.